Do you want your business to grow faster? Are you open to new and out-of-the-box ways to drive revenues and increase value? How do you imagine the most successful entrepreneurs and business leaders double, triple, or expand their businesses tenfold or more? The answer is Deals. This is a weekly podcast featuring conversations with business owners, executives, and leaders as we reveal behind-the-scenes details that give you, our listeners, the confidence to pursue your own deal-driven growth. On this show, we discuss a huge variety of deals, everything from large, complex mergers and acquisitions, capital raising, joint ventures, strategic alliances, real estate, affiliate and sponsorship deals, franchising, and more. My name is Corey Kupfer, and I've been supporting deal-driven growth for businesses for over 35 years as a successful entrepreneur, professional negotiator, and attorney. My goal is to help you strategize, plan for, find, and complete deals that will help your company grow faster. Welcome to the DealQuest Podcast. Let's get started. Jerry Blakely was a successful CFP financial advisor for over 40 years. He bought practices and sold practices during that time. He's been consulting RIA firms in the art and science of helping the selling advisor pass the client relationships to the buying advisor with maximum client retention. Jerry, welcome to the DealQuest Podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Corey.
Well, so listen, I'm excited to have you on. I mean, obviously, you have a huge amount of experience in the industry. As our listeners know, we represent a lot of wealth management RIA firms. And we've had folks on, certainly, including the top CEOs of some of the PE-backed aggregators talking about these big buy-side deals. We've had folks that have sold. We haven't done as much, especially on these smaller kind of tuck-in deals, is talk about it from the advisor perspective, which you have personally, and then also how this mesh really works, and from the client retention point of view. So I want to get into all of that. But before we go there, I want to take you back to when you were a little kid growing up, maybe 8, 10, 12 years old. What did you want to be? Because I'm guessing a CFP financial advisor and now consultant in the wealth management industry wasn't it back then, but you tell me.
Oh, wow. So you're doing like way back in childhood. What did I want to be? So without a whole bunch of history, I'll tell you that from junior high on, I wanted to emulate my surrogate father figures in junior high and high school. I was a marching band nerd, so I wanted to be a marching band director.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I actually have a very good friend who came up in marching band also, and he actually ended up becoming a music teacher and continued in that area. But so great. One more question looking back. What was the first deal of any kind that you were involved in?
Well, that was probably one of my best friends, a guy that I trusted implicitly, that I met at the Life Underwriters Association meetings in the town where my practice was years ago. And he led me to the Lord, actually. So we trusted each other a lot, completely different businesses. But he was older than me, and he was needing to sell. So he talked to me. I was quite humbled to say, you would trust me with your clients. He says, yeah. He said, well, I don't know who else in town, that I trust enough. We compared notes. We had extremely similar practices with the product mix and how we acquired, how we did our marketing to acquire new clientele and so forth. So we cut the deal. We actually used, everybody says don't do this, but we trusted each other, and it was what made the deal so sweet. We used the same appraisal firm, the same, I think it was, can I say the name of the firm?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it was FP Transitions. He engaged them, I engaged them. And they even said, you guys, can use separate attorneys. And we said, well, the attorney in town that we would use, we're both friends with, and we know you guys. And they said, that's okay with us. So it was like two friends shaking hands in a love fest. And we just said, I want to make it good for you, and he wants to make it good for me. And we worked through it. And as things came up that were, somebody would say, oh, I didn't think that was going to happen. Well, what do you want? Well, I want this. Well, let's restructure something if we could, without doing any documentation and stuff. So that was the first deal. And most of those clients are still in the practice that I sold 10 years later when I sold my practice. Most of those clients were still in that bunch. They stuck with me. And we had an understanding of how we thought. We just talked to each other. Nobody told us what to do. We just thought, how do we get these clients to, they love you. His name was Gordon. They love you, Gordon. How do we get them to like me at least? And I don't want to have a problem where they leave and I don't have any money to pay you. And then we got to fight this contract. And he's like, no, I don't want that either. Because if you can't pay me, then I'm screwed up, on his side. So
Right.
We had an understanding of how to massage the clients and take our time. He moved into my office. He got out of his lease and everything. He physically moved into my office, so he was there for 1 year. And during that year, we personally met with every client together. We had a great big handoff routine we did. And after that year, we want to get rid of him, like, get out of our office now, now that we've done this. So it took him a while for him to realize he could stay home and, still get paid from the buy-sell contract. So anyway, that was really smooth, and that kind of set the tone and the precedent for when I had to sell my practice. I didn't have to, but I decided to sell my practice. And again, I got very little instruction what to do, and I didn't ask. I just said, I'll do what we did before. It kind of worked okay. And that was my experience in that. And then after I sold my practice, the RIA firm I was working with that I sold it to hired me back to be a consultant, like, training for taxes and training for sales training. And surprise to everybody, what they realized is they were buying firms like mine. I was number one out of a whole bunch of old guys that were trying to get out of the business, and they were buying them. They were recruiting new talent, then figuring out they had a problem. And that's when they asked me, well, can you help us talk the old guys and the new guys together to do whatever you did in your practice? And I said, there's not much to talk about. What's the problem? It was so smooth. Isn't this like common sense, illogical? Everybody would do it. And the answer was, no, it's not. I don't know. It was elusive to everybody, but I think why it made so much sense to me, it was just two friends, originally just two friends saying, let's make it work for each other and for the clients too. But three-way party, right? Clients, buyer, and seller. Everybody has to be happy, or it doesn't work, and then the finances fall apart for everybody.
Yeah. And listen, I love the fact, because sometimes people start telling these kind of stories and then it turns into the horror story where the friendship was, lost because of the business issues and things like that. So I love the fact that, and listen, one of the things even I say as an attorney, right? I mean, listen, the wisdom is you should have separate attorneys because your interests are separate, right? Especially on the other side of a buy-sell deal, there's some ways you can waive conflicts, obviously, and you can do it at a fundamental level. And I've been around long enough to use this because it's pre-digital. I always used to say to clients, listen, there's two advantages of doing a contract, right? Which you did. You just did one lawyer. One is the remedies thing. Oh, if something goes wrong, it'll tell us who has what rights and what we can do, right? But the other one is it helps, like doing a written contract helps what the lawyers call a meeting of the minds to make sure you've really thought through stuff and there's less chance that there's going to be a dispute. But I always say to people, listen, if things come up that you haven't anticipated or that the circumstances change or whatever it is, right? Ideally, you never have to pull out that contract. Ideally, the relationship is what will get you through that. If you have to go to the contract, then you've got a problem in the relationship, right? Other than maybe it's to remind somebody, but you probably have a problem in the relationship. And then, we don't litigate, but you get my litigation colleagues involved and it's a mess, right? So hopefully you never have to go there. And, obviously you didn't, which is great on that first deal.
We took the gamble on, I'm not telling anybody listening to our podcast, it's okay to use the same attorney. Like, it's probably a bad idea. We took the gamble because we were so naive in doing this. And again, we trusted each other. I always say we both read the same book, which is the book He Led Me to the Lord on. It's like we just trusted each other. The only problem we had, and we didn't have to go to the contract. Let's see how to tell this part of the story. He was, retiring, and at the same time, he was retiring from his marriage.
Okay.
He was saying, okay. So after a long time marriage, he was splitting up, and it just happened to be at the same time that my longtime high school sweetheart marriage had passed away the same year.
Wow.
And he was going through all those struggles, and I was going through those struggles. And we were bonding over the beer and the tears and that kind of stuff. But he got remarried within a year or two or something. It was a while, I think we had a 5-year payout or something, whatever it was. I don't remember. But after he got remarried, he said, something we didn't talk about, Jerry, was you owe me all this money. I said, yeah, and it's going well, I got a lot money left. I got a lot more money left in my practice after I pay you the buyout stuff each month. The money's coming in, I pay all my bills, run the practice and all that, and I pay you, and like, wow, I'm ready to buy a new car. I'm doing good, this kind of thing. And he said, the problem is we didn't think about if you die, he doesn't get his money. His money was tied into, half of it had to go to his alimony and all that stuff. So it was like whole ordeal that he's thinking got big problems if Jerry can't pay.
Yeah.
And I said, well, why wouldn't I be able to pay? I'm making all this money. You trust me. I just keep writing the checks. You keep cashing them. You and your ex keep cashing them. Well, what if you die? We should do a buy-sell life insurance. And we didn't consult attorneys except for, the idea was I'll own the contract. I'll put you on as a collateral assignment beneficiary, collateral assignment as per your interest appear in the attached note. That kind of thing. We figured out that month if I died how much I owed him, and we bought the policy for that amount. That I think I just paid for it myself. I can't remember how we split that, but every month if I had died, the amount that he would get was going to be lower because the note was going down.
Sure.
When it was all paid off, we did I own the contract, so I turned in a change of collateral assignment or something. There's no note anymore, so it just stayed in for my own personal estate. But that was the only contingency that we found that we didn't. Yeah, and then I could have said we didn't sign that originally. Take a hike, but it made sense. If the shoe were on my foot and I needed him to pay me to make sure I paid my alimony and stuff, like, why don't I just go ahead and accommodate that? It would make sense. That's what a guy would do with somebody in a business interest that they care for each other. So that's kind of how that practice ended up. But that was a long time ago.
Well, I'm glad it worked out. You said something else about that experience that I want to talk about more generally, which is you said at some point you were like, okay, the year passed, you did a great handoff of the clients, right? And then it was sort of like, hey, we don't need you here anymore. You can go home, right? It's and I don't know if this was the case in that case, and you don't have to specify, but at a high level in general, one of the issues that comes up sometimes is, you can't get the old guy to leave, so to speak. It could be because they just want to stay active. They don't want to be home. They want a purpose. There's a million reasons. So talk to me a little bit about that, because, I don't know how much of that was in the first deal, but I know certainly in your consulting since then, that is a factor that comes up in the discussions. Like, what is the ongoing role? When does that evolve or change or end? Talk to me a little bit about that aspect of it.
Well, and that whole issue, Corey, was the key, the big crux on, I guess, the value of my consulting. I thought I was being all cool with sales training and tax training. I was an Ed Slott elite advisor guy. I knew all this tax stuff nobody else knew, and that was my role. I was earning my money consulting through training the new guys. There's a script to follow, and if you do it by, doesn't matter, everybody's got good investments, but I'm going to save you taxes kind of thing. So I was doing the sales training and all that. And my RIA boss guy, about 3 years into me, I've sold the practice. This would be 3, 4, 5 years into that, and I'm doing the consulting and training, and he's asking me, can you go talk to this other office that we bought? And you know who they are because we grew up in the same RIA. So these are old guys that were, across the country. They were my friends from, you see them once a year at a convention or something, but can you visit there? We're going to pay your expenses and stuff. And can you go there and figure out what's going on? We're having a problem. I'm like, well, sure, I'll take a free vacation. You're going to pay for everything. I'll go, So in each case, the problem was that the down payment check was long cashed. Okay. The buyer paid the down payment check. They got all the paperwork done. The buy-sell agreement was done, the APA stuff, everything's fine. But we're 2, in one case, 3 years into the deal. The old guy, the seller, who they own their own practice. All the clients love them. They haven't told their clients that they're transitioning, but they have gone through 1, 2, 3, one case, 4 different new advisors come in the office that were supposed to be getting trained so that they could feel comfortable saying, I sold the place and please tell the clients you don't have to leave because I got a new replacement here.
Yeah.
And so 3 different offices in particular, I remember going and talking with them, a lot of emotions. It's all emotional. And I didn't have the problem myself, Because when I sold my practice, I mentioned a passing of my high school sweetheart. We were married for 40 years. She passed. 5 years into her passing, I got remarried. And then 2 years later, I sold the practice. And then, then I did the play out thing for 5 years on that sale. But my point was, I was very targeted to my mind because of family circumstances and stuff, that I had a time in mind that I wanted to be out by age 70. I think it was age 65. We signed the APA, and then it was supposed to be 5 years, the transition was done and everything else. So why 70? Like, I don't know. In my mind, I even would explain it to people, saying, for my own case, this was an emotional thing from my heart, Corey. I would tell people, I don't think it's appropriate for me to die at my desk working. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of clients. I don't know. We had 700 clients, a couple of whatever the number is, 200 million or something. I don't remember the number, big number of assets and everything, but big ongoing business. I had 7 employees, trying to bring in new people just because the practice got big. But at what point do you say, I'm going to, and then maybe it's never enough, like enough is enough. Well, can always use more money, but at what point do you say, let's get out when the getting's good? Back at that time in the industry, I tried a bit. I couldn't find anybody in town that could write me that down payment check. There were no other successful advisors in a relatively small town, North LA County. But my RIA owner that I was working with was interested. I didn't know he had in mind to do what the industry does now, right? Buy a bunch of these practices, get them all tuned up, and then flip it to somebody else. So that's what he had in mind. But I was the first one, and he was interested in buying the practice. And I knew he was good for the check, and all that stuff. And so we had worked together and worked with him for 20 years, the RIA owner. And I sold to them, and I had a specific thing in mind that if I signed the contract here, now I've got to work on getting out of the office.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a hard leave. It was, I think, a 5-year payout. And I think the contract said either one of us could say, get out early. You could leave the practice if you wanted. We still owe you the money. Or if things turn out where we want you to get out of the building, the practice was even in a building that I owned. So, the new owner was leasing the office space from my own building.
Sure.
So it didn't matter to me, but I had a time frame in mind. So fast forward to these other offices, each had their own little story, but it kind of came down to this with each of them, a little different reason for each one. But I said, well, have you told your clients that you sold the practice, like say 2 years ago,
Right.
and you're working on replacing, and you've got 2 replacement advisors here you've been working at for a couple of years. And one of them I've been helping training, the other one you trained him yourself. The answers in each was, no, I haven't told the clients anything.
Wow.
So I said, why haven't you told the clients? The answer was the same in each one. The new advisors don't know anything. Now, they're not new. The youngest was 10 years in the industry.
Right.
I mean, the ROA was...
It's not some kid out of school. This is...
Yeah, they were recruiting people with letters after their name and everything, But the old guy's thinking, I've been doing this for 40 years. Nobody does it as good as I do. This whole feeling's like, yeah, I know. Nobody's going to do it like you did because you're you. So you've got to train the new guys and get comfortable, tell the clients that you've got the new guy in place. So the answer was the same. I'm not going to train those new guys. They don't know enough to be trained. And I'm like, there's something wrong with this. So in each of those offices, 3 in particular, there was a couple of more that were similar to this, but the problem we were finding was when the agreement to do the buy-sell, APA, was done, there was no targeted exit time. I don't even want to say a date. Like, it didn't have to be July 7th. It was just like 2 years, 3 years, let's have there was nothing. And so the old guy thinking, well, I'm not going to work on transitioning the practice because I don't trust my beloved clients to the new guy. So why don't you train the new guy? No, I can't train the new guy. I'm busy running my practice.
Right.
I would come back and say, you should be you sold the practice. You should be transitioning it, not running it. It's a difference. It came down to this weird thing of my reason for leaving was tied to the wives, the marriages and the deaths and all this kind of stuff. So I'm thinking, I'm sitting here talking to some other old guy. I said, well, why'd you sell the practice? And one guy said, well, I like to fish, I like to hunt, and I like my son's in Minnesota and stuff like that. I said, well, you can't do that, right? Because you're tied. Yeah. I said, well, when you sold the practice 2 years ago, when do you want to go do that? Well, as soon as I get good advisors, like, well, they've interviewed and vetted 10 people. You got 2 and you won't work with them. And that guy kicked me out. He was mad at me. He sent me back. I still got paid my consulting fee, but turned out a month or 2 later, he's changing his office to understand I'm going to leave in 12 months from now or something like that. So I better get busy getting the new guys on,
Yeah.
And the other 2 was a similar story. Somebody said, the reason I sold the practice is the spouse was quite a bit older and had sold their law practice and they wanted time to travel and stuff together.
Yep.
Well, the old advisor was 70 years old already. Like, what are you waiting for? He said, well, I don't have good advisors. You got good advisors. You won't train them. I'm not going to train them. They don't know enough. That person really threw me out. I was very gentle, but I'm trying to figure out, if you sold the thing and don't want to leave, why'd you sell it?
Yeah.
So each of them had a story. The thing that I tried to get them to understand, and everybody understood it finally, but the people I worked with, if you can develop and articulate the reason you're selling the practice,
Yes.
and, keep it pretty close to true, because you're telling people. You don't have to go back and try to figure out what you said to somebody and change the story. My clients was all the same. I got the deceased spouse, new spouse. I used to tell the clients, in explaining to them why I'm leaving, they don't get mad at me, but I'm getting old. So just like, you're getting old, I helped you retire and stuff. It's my turn. This is not nilly-willy. Been working on this for a few years, because you remember when my wife passed? You remember when I got remarried? Blah, blah, blah. Part of the story was to tell the clients, but don't worry, you don't have to find a new advisor.
Yes.
And that was part of what I was telling, the guys I was counseling with, is develop your story, tell the clients why you're getting out. If they loved you, they'll understand. They want the best for you. Tell them what's going on.
Yes.
But you gotta feel comfortable saying some version of, but don't worry, Joe and Mary, you don't have to go find somebody new. I got a good guy. We worked on this new guy for 2 years. He's here. He's trained. He does all this wonderful stuff. We're going to set up a meeting so you can meet the guy and you do the transition,
And the interesting part about that is that, in my experience, what I've seen is when the advisor actually vouches for their successor, right, with the clients, there's a very high rate of retention. If the advisor doesn't go have all that stuff going on like you talked about, and they really embrace it, and they really do what happened on your deal, right? Do the joint meetings, bring the people in, introduce them, vouch for them, and all that kind of stuff. It's very successful. So it's interesting. I mean, neither you or I, a psychologist or psychiatrist, but, any consultant, a lawyer always has the joke that, well, sometimes we provide the services of unlicensed, psychologists or psychologists, because a lot of it does come down to emotional, mental, whatever, the blocks that people have or things that they worry about that aren't, the case. I mean, obviously, yeah, you have somebody who's a 10-year plus, advisor or CFP or whatever, to say that person's not qualified, if you put a little time into them, let them get to know your clients, is really, doesn't come from a place of logic to have that concern.
That retention word you use, it was incredible to me. So it was January 1st, 2019, when I signed my APA agreement, my buy-sell agreement.
Let's take a break from the show for a minute so I can tell you about an incredible resource my team and I have put together for you. Secrets of Deal-Driven Growth, Creative Ways to Grow Your Business Even in Challenging Times, is a powerful ebook that helps you take DealQuest podcast episodes and apply them to your own life and business. This is the ideal tool for anyone looking for creative ways to grow as deal makers, and you can get yours now. It's as easy as heading to CoreyKupfer.com/workbook and downloading your copy. While you're there, you can also consider joining our dynamic deal-driven community of founders, experts, small business owners, and entrepreneurs. Now back to the show.
And it took me, even though I had 5 years to go to get out, at the end of the 3rd year, I was out.
Yeah.
And I even managed to get my remaining payments accelerated. So I was out in 3 years, but then I kept working for the RIA doing the training and consulting.
Yes.
Now, why I'm telling you this is that particular practice that I sold, which the RIA, using his own words, ended up making it their flagship, practice on how to do this stuff. So, okay. Well, the guy sitting at my desk now is only 33 years old. He was Corey number 7 of people I was trying to get at the desk. He wasn't even the main one selected. The guy that was crowned, he was going to be under him. The guy that was crowned was asked to go by the broker-dealer after a while. The guy with lots of letters and, mid-career in his mid-40s and all that, with some issues that didn't work out. So here, the guy sitting behind him, who's now in place in the office, he's doing fantastically. He's my financial advisor too, because I left all my money there. It's invested the way I think it should be invested, because I trained the guy, right? So,
Right.
But we had lunch over Christmas vacation. He was in my town, so I was in his town too. We got together twice. He was here in Oceanside, and I was up in North LA where the office is, where his office is. So we met twice, and I asked him how many and he said he gave me the numbers. The practice is about twice as big as when I sold it.
Okay.
And I said, God, that's only 5 or 6 years later. I should have stayed there. I shouldn't have sold it, right? I could get a lot more premium for it now if it grew that big and then I sold it. But I asked him, how many of those original clients do you think are still there?
Yeah.
The ones that I did the handoff to him and to the guy that got booted out, right? But I told my story and lots of explanation and tears and holding hands with the clients and that kind of stuff. He told me it's about 97%.
Wow.
The 97%, I think maybe his numbers are wrong. I mean, if you're hitting 93 or something, that's pretty darn good, even 90. But here we are 6 years later, the practice is bigger and most of those clients are still there.
And even with somebody who didn't work out and left, which could be a factor that could adversely affect retention, even with that.
Even this number 7 guy, and now we got somebody under him, okay? But my big contact is with my number 7 guy, my guy sitting at my desk.
Yes.
There are clients that love him and are still with him that I bought from when I bought the practice before, from the guy that was divorcing and all that. They're still there. My clients, still there. But think about this. There are clients that my number 7 guy has that's gone through at least 5 advisor changes because we put somebody in place and he left or we got rid of him or something like that, and they're still there in the office.
Amazing.
My practice manager I had for 20 years when I grew that practice is still there. So she's been there for 26 years. And I think that has a lot to do with it, where you tell the clients, things are changing, blah, blah, blah. Here's the new advisor. But you remember so-and-so? The practice manager's name?
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying not to give too many names here if anybody sees this and knows who I'm talking about. But that practice manager is going to stay here with you, stay here. So anything you need, they know they can call that person because they
know this continuity.
Continuity, exactly.
Yeah. All right. So we talked about, in terms of the challenges sometimes in these transitions, we talked about, the issue of the seller, the senior person, not trusting the juniors or not letting go, right? What else are the factors that make for either challenges or a positive, transition? What are the other factors that come up that make that difference between the ones that work and the ones that don't work?
As far as you say the ones that work, you mean the clients retaining?
Yeah, and like a good transition from the senior to the junior advisor on these situations versus the ones that that don't work. In addition to the big factor we talked about the senior person not willing to trust or train the junior.
Yeah. Well, I think you got to be sensitive to good or bad, the clients that are there because they're still there, when you do the sale and you're trying to explain to them what's happening and somebody else is going to take over. Good or bad, they think what you've been doing with their money is okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's why they're with you.
Yes.
So part of the assimilation and training with the new guy, like an example, I didn't like to pick individual stocks, and I would tell my clients that I don't pick stocks. I pick stock pickers, and I explain what I meant by that. I like manage money and so forth. So if I bring a new guy in and his parameters, I'm an expert at options and all this stuff, and he wants to change the portfolios like crazy. Don't even talk about taxes, pretend they're all pre-tax accounts so you can change anything. There's no tax ramifications. The clients are going to freak out. Like, we never did this. No, what's an option? They never heard of an option before. I didn't use options. So one thing is making sure the new advisors understand what the clients were used to, and you're doing things relatively the same way. Use the same language where we're setting appointments, review appointments, quarterly, annual, whatever you want to call it. What another thing I was just going to say? Oh, we had a big deal with a lot of my clients. I mentioned that me and my old friend read the same book. So I'm talking about the Bible, right? So we were churchgoers and all this stuff, still am. But my point is, with very little marketing toward the Christian community, we had a lot of Christian clients.
Yeah.
Well, that happens, right? They come in for whatever reason. I used to have a sign on the wall behind my desk about being a Christian father, and sometimes you say, "Bless you," and, "Oh, are you a Christian?" Somebody asks you, and if they don't like Christians, they don't have to work with me, but if they like Christians, well, great, I'm one, let's work together. So
Yeah.
it worked very comfortably that way. So here comes the practice change. The number 7 guy has got an extremely Hebrew type name. He's very moral, very everything, but it's got that Jewish flavor to his name, and a client say, "Is he Christian?" And I would say, "Well, he's pretty close. Jesus was a Jew, if you remember. Let's go back and look in the Bible. You joke about it or something. I don't know, but it was helping the clients understand." And I talk with that advisor also that you're going to maybe get pushback from, big handful of clients that think, "Well, we got to have Christian." And you can become a Christian right now if you want to go through the confession and all that stuff. But assuming you're not, were you aware that, because you should use this, were you aware that Jesus was a Jew?
Right.
He's like, "No." I said, "Okay, let's open up the thing and talk about this." And, he wasn't a real, what am I trying to say, hardcore practicing Jew.
Yeah.
But they do the Hanukkah as well as the Christmas and all that stuff. And so just understanding to have something, this is kind of silly, Corey, I don't know, but you're asking me, and I thought that was part of this practice, was something integrally important to the clients that might come up to the advisor. And
Yeah.
if I can, one of the best sales techniques is answer the objection before it comes up. If I can mention that in a client setting without the advisor there, but also the advisor should be aware that he's being talked about behind his back, that question's going to come up. And so understand the context of it, and don't lie and everything. But I mean, what does it mean if you're not a Christian? You're going to lie and cheat and steal their money? It doesn't mean that, so.
Right. I mean, that's the point. That's interesting because I happen to be Jewish. We have plenty of
Okay.
plenty of Christian clients, and even some very. I think you're right. I mean, the conversation of and this is just an example. It applies to anything. I mean, you also mentioned like not changing their portfolios, whatever. Like any kind of significant difference is going to at least raise the question. Then the question is how you deal with that. Right. And what I found on the religion issue, frankly, is that what good Christians or good any kind of religious people really care about is the fundamental principles that they believe in, right? So are you a moral person? Do you have integrity? Can they trust you? Right? Are you the kind of person that, and so if you stress those values, which, I think underlie, frankly, I mean, not necessarily the way they're always practiced, but underlie, most religions, certainly Judaism and Christianity, have very similar fundamental. I think it's sort of the broader lesson outside of the religious conversation specifically is this conversation of, okay, if there is a difference, right, how do you address that, right? How do you find that common ground? And then, and the timing when you do it, like with with the difference in the portfolio, maybe the way you service clients, you may slowly evolve some things over time, but if you come in and you suddenly change every portfolio and the whole investment philosophy or whatever, it's going to cause disruption. So any of these differences have the risk of causing disruption. The question is, how do you communicate it? How do you deal with it? How do you show that there's alignment, right?
Yeah, and I think the beauty to me of the philosophy, why I think it works so well, and why, to me, my message is targeted to the retiring guy. But everybody going to understand it, that the clients are there in the middle. But when you do the buy-sell, you're buying and selling the client relationships. So if the relationships don't stick, then you bought a distressed asset. Right. And the buyer don't got the money to pay the guy he owes it to. And the seller says, "What do you mean you can't pay me?"
Yeah.
And so there's a chargeback thing, right? We're going to reduce the payments to you or come after, you said you'd have 90% retention. You only got 82. We're going to pay you less, whatever. It's to everybody's benefit to understand the selling advisor, the leaving old guy advisor has a bunch of skin in the game to make sure the emotions stick with the clients. This is why I'm leaving. don't get emotional to the clients. Don't get, a lot of them like, how could you let me down? I had people cry. Somebody got mad, like, sorry, I got old. I don't know what to tell you, telling you the truth. Another person was an advisor that I was working with, could not get past the dime to get, the new guy came in, very well trained. And she even did a great trainer. She couldn't tell the clients. And I said, well, why not? It wasn't the same story that the new guy don't know nothing. I'm not going to teach him because he doesn't know anything. It wasn't that. He said, the reason is I feel uncomfortable and bad that my clients thinking I made a bunch of money on them and I'm going to run off and with their money and retire. I mean, not with their money, but
Right.
it's like, it doesn't make any sense. So let's go back to, why'd you sell? Why'd you sell? Well, my husband had retired a while back. He's got a pension coming in, and we bought this property back on a lake back east someplace. And we're going to be building a cabin. And we always envisioned blah, 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 blah. So that's a very worthy thing that you're going to retire on. So how would you not share? Do clients love you and appreciate you? Well, share with them your dream. You've been dreaming about this for how long? 15, 20 years. You finally bought the property. You're getting the construction plans done. You're going to use your money that you made by helping them, which is all, that's good. There's a lot of beneficence in that story. Tell the story. You can't do it. 3 weeks later, she had a script all worked out and everything. She was feeling comfortable to let the clients know. And I thought, wow, there's different reasons. I don't know. But if that advisor had not got over that and tell some BS story that's not true, and then, I don't know, it's like, well, those clients aren't going to stick, with the new advisor.
It's interesting, Jerry. It's such an important point in terms of the transition and deals. For me, I have this conversation a lot with people just generally, and I guess it's a decision on how you relate to your clients or whatever. I find, especially with what I do, with what, you and these other advisors do, you're dealing with successful, sophisticated, people who have all kinds of things going on in their lives and whatever, right? It's not somebody, and not that I have any criticism or whatever, but it's not somebody who's, scraping to feel, where their next meal's coming from, right? So they understand these things. They're living a lot of these same things in their lives. So, for example, I have lawyers I know and some advisors, whatever, who are like, when they go on vacation, they don't want to let their clients know they're even on vacation, right? And they've got to, what if, I want them to know, I share my vacation. I said to the client, I'm going, I'm going on vacation. I even say to them straight out, my goal is to be off the grid. If you have an emergency or whatever it is, trust me, the team will be able to find me, obviously. But, and I'll even say to a client, if they say, hey, Corey, can we get this done by next week? I don't hesitate to say, hey, I'm on vacation next week. Can it wait another week? And if the answer is no, okay. And I mean, fortunately, at this point, I have a team and I'm not the only one doing the work. I get other people to do it. But the point is, like, my approach has always been to be human, to share what's going on in my life. And you know what? 99%, if not higher, of the clients are like, no, Corey, enjoy your vacation, because they want to enjoy their vacations, right? They have the same situation. They serve clients and they want to, I find, and I love the fact that a lot of what you advise in all of these different scenarios comes down to telling the story and the authentic story, not some made up story, right? Like, really, it's sharing an authentic story, whether that's, around why you're selling, or whether that's, why you trust the advisor, that you're going to, because I really believe in that. I think we're very aligned on that.
Do we have time for another very
Please do. Yeah.
Story in regard to what you're talking about?
Yes.
So I didn't even think about this one, but it just now came to mind. I sold the practice. I'm doing the transition. This is in an office building that I had purchased with my estate planning attorney that I networked with for my whole career. And he and I bought a building together, and we had a referral thing going on, right? That was really cool. So I had this one client that wasn't that big, turned out later to have about 5 million, which was big to me, but whatever, under 1 million to start with. But, we did the same thing for her, we did for everybody, and got her over to the attorney's office and got the trust done and all that. So the transition happens. She gets transitioned, introduced and everything to the mid-career guy that got booted out, I told you. Okay. It was so bad, the attorney even asked, after I left the building, wanted that guy out of the building. You can't, he's the main guy at my desk, and the practice is leasing from our building, So that guy that got booted out was bad news. But here's the point. I was back in the office trying to get things settled after I was supposedly gone, and my buyout was done, but I was consulting, okay? And I'm there one day, and that lady I'm talking about, I get a call from the front receptionist that says, so-and-so's here to see the advisor that got booted out. I said, oh my God, he's been gone like for months.
Wow.
Well, this was a review appointment set up almost a year ago. And what I didn't know, because I wasn't dealing with the clients, was her father had passed away in the meantime. And the attorney's dealing with all that. And they had a bunch of property and stuff and sold a bunch of things to get money and referred her back to the financial planning practice, which was me, but I wasn't there. I'm not doing this stuff. So she thinks she has this advisor and nobody told her that he's gone.
Wow.
And I'm going, oh my God, like egg on the face. I'm thinking $5 million. How much money is $5 million? Like, I got to ask her to come back to my desk here and talk with me. So, wow, what do you do? So talk about authentic. I said, whatever her name was, I'm so sorry this happened. That guy that got booted was number 6. Okay, it's so hard. My high school sweetheart passed. I got remarried. You're aware of that. You were a client of mine. Probably got invited to the wedding and all this stuff and the funeral. Not the wedding, but the funeral, the other wife. And so I'm explaining all this to her, and hard to get through the story without crying.
Mm.
And she feels that. And she starts crying. And she says, I understand because my dad owned 3 or 4 ski resorts. And I used to work with him. Lives happened separately and I wasn't working with him anymore. But he wanted me to run the ski resorts. So I wouldn't do it. And she says, we spent so much money in years trying to find a replacement because he was getting old. He wanted to preserve the value of the estate to give to her. And he couldn't if the ski resort shut down because nobody could run it.
Yeah.
And she cried and said, it was so hard. So she says, I know it's hard to have a successful business and sell it and retire. And she said, no problem. I'll meet number 7, meet the new guy.
Wow.
So I didn't mean to get emotional.
No, what a story, Jerry. I'm glad you really shared that. Yeah.
Well, the crux of what I found in this whole thing is the emotions. It's the advisor, and you use the word authentic. It's relating in the cases where that should be done, because there are other APAs that don't have anything to do with the relationship. The clients are going to stick around. They didn't know who the advisor was. It's some guy on an 800 number. I don't know. But when there's a relationship, maybe there's a different way to do it. But the way I'm telling you from my experience, buying a practice, me selling a practice, and then helping other practices get over the hump, don't lose the clients. That's what the transaction is about, is having the clients anchor in emotionally that they think their money is going to be okay left in that business.
Yeah. Yeah. Jerry, listen, I love having you on. If people want to find out more about the consulting you're doing now or whatever, where should they go? Where do they find you?
A phone number and an email. Do I tell you out loud, or are you gonna
You can, yeah, say it out loud, and then we'll put it in the show notes as well.
Okay, so the phone number is 661-965-1226. It's a cell phone, but I'm tax deducting it for business purposes. If that makes anybody feel better. And then just an email, Jerry Blakely, JerryBlakely, Jerry Blakely, and the digits 0612097. Jerry Blakely 0612097 at iCloud.com.
Great. Jerry, my final question on the podcast is always about my highest value in life, which is freedom. And for me, that means everything from freedom around the world for people from oppression to why I've been an entrepreneur for decades and haven't had a boss. What does freedom mean to you, and how does it impact your life and business?
What does freedom mean to me? Wow. About 4 months before my late wife passed in 2012, I told her it was financial freedom. We had, back in the old days when a guy could start selling life insurance from the trunk of his car and then build up a great big 700 clients with investments and everything. So all that time building the practice, and many times it was not nickel and dime. What's the word? Paycheck to paycheck kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Never saved up any money, because every time I saved money up, some crisis would happen, have to raid the savings to go keep the employees going and pay their rent and the phone bills and all that.
Sure.
But it was she passed in March, about November before she passed, I said, I got the feeling the way things are looking every month and everything, I'm thinking ahead with marketing and everything going on, trajectory we're on is, I think we're going to make it over the hump. So fast forward, gosh, what was that? I'm trying to think. 2012, 11 years. Okay. To me, the freedom is what the applying all these concepts and principles to, good integrity, failed financial planning, and trying to retain the clients and all that. I was able to get out of the town we were living in. There was reasons to get out that were back again tied to emotions and different things there with my current wife. My new who was a client, by the way. My current wife, her husband passed. And so we had a lot to commiserate about, we got married. But the freedom today, we're able to leave there and move down by San Diego and not have any debt and can go to the movies and buy pizza when I want to and that kind of thing. For a lot of people, like, big deal. Well, I was brought up in the ghetto and I had to scruff my whole life. Yeah. And the freedom to me meant I felt good about helping people. Church uses the word ministry, and I've never been real involved with ministry, helping with music and helping in the parking lot and that kind of thing. To me, my life ministry was helping people at my desk, knowing who was watching me. That was the ministry. But that created to me now in my retirement years the freedom. I don't have to work. I don't have to consult and all that junk. I still enjoy doing it. And like when you and I were talking, when setting up this talk today, I said, here's all I got to say, my experience. I don't know, is that valuable to anybody? I don't know. To me, it's like everybody should know this. And you're going, no, they don't know that. So
they don't know that.
Yeah, I've got the freedom. I'll keep helping people if they want help. Sure.
Love it. Jerry Blakely, thanks for being such a great guest on the DealQuest Podcast.
Okay, Corey, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of DealQuest, where we help you understand how deal-driven growth can be your ticket to freedom. If you are interested in finding out more about my law firm, the services we provide to entrepreneurial and growing companies across industries all over the country, and my partner Brian Megan and I, and my amazing team, just head over to kupferlaw.com. That's kupferlaw.com. And if you want to follow more of my content, head over to my LinkedIn page where I post regularly. I'm Corey Kupfer. Until next week, wishing you the freedom and financial prosperity that I know your DealQuest will bring.